The nightmare beast and the human who didn't run. The first time Evan Cross set foot on the alien world of Lithera, he felt the air tremble around him, as if the very atmosphere carried the heartbeat of creatures watching from the shadows. Human training had warned him about this planet, about its silent forests and strange glowing winds, but no one had truly prepared him for the feeling that something ancient and powerful lived beneath every root and stone. He tightened the straps on his light armor, trying to calm the uneasy rhythm of his breath, yet he kept walking forward, drawn by the strange beauty of the alien world that shimmered like a dream and threatened like a blade at the same time. On the other side of the training field, Sarai walked with the calm grace of a royal warrior, her steps silent, her back straight, her long silver-blue hair flowing like water in the wind. She commanded. Everyone on Lithera feared her, not because of her cold eyes or her perfect posture, but because of the creature that walked beside her like a living shadow. Rune, the nightmare beast, the six-eyed panther with scales instead of fur and silent paws that moved like smoke on stone. Its claws dripped with venom that could melt steel. Its eyes glowed like fire trapped behind glass, and its throat carried a power that could end a soldier before he even realized he was being hunted. Every alien stepped back when Sarai appeared, and even elite warriors lowered their gaze when Rune's shadow touched their boots. But on this day there was one person who did not bow, did not freeze, and did not run. The human boy with tired eyes and a stubborn heart, Evan Cross, stood exactly where he was, staring at the creature that everyone else avoided. Sarai noticed him immediately because it was impossible not to. A human standing still in front of Rune was like a child stepping into a storm and daring lightning to strike. Her soldiers whispered in panic, telling Evan to step back, warning him with hand signals. But the young human did not move even an inch. Rune's six eyes locked onto him, glowing with ancient fire, and the world seemed to fall silent. Every leaf froze in the wind, every alien held their breath, and even Sarai felt her heart tremble with confusion. Rune had never stopped once he started stalking. Never paused, never hesitated, never changed course. But now the creature stood perfectly still, staring at the human with a strange awareness. Evan felt the ground vibrate beneath him as Rune moved closer, each step slow and silent like a whisper of death. The creature towered over him, its breath thick with heat, its jaws opening just enough to show rows of blades designed to kill without mercy. Still he did not run, because something deep inside him whispered that fear would only feed the beast. So Evan simply breathed and waited, trusting a feeling he could not explain. Sarai stepped forward, about to command Rune to stop. But the creature did something no one expected. It lowered its massive head, leaned toward the human, and pressed its forehead gently against Evan's chest. A sound escaped the creature's throat, not a growl, not a threat, but something soft, something ancient, something almost like recognition. Gasps spread through the training field as if the entire world had forgotten how to breathe. Sarai's sharp eyes widened, her heart hammering inside her chest in a way she had not felt since childhood. People whispered in fear, confusion, disbelief, because Rune did not bow to anyone, not even to the council, not even to the queen. But here it was, showing submission to a human it had never met. Evan slowly raised a hand, every part of him shaking, not from fear but from a strange pull that felt almost like destiny. His fingers touched Rune's scaled head, warm and rough like ancient stone, and the creature let out a soft rumble that echoed through the clearing. Sarai felt something twist inside her as she watched the scene, a feeling she fought to hide behind her usual cold expression. How could a human touch the creature she spent years bonding with, training, protecting, and building from her own genetic design? Evan finally looked up at Sarai, his voice quiet but steady as he whispered that he didn't mean harm. Sarai opened her mouth to answer, but the words died on her tongue when she saw the way Rune stayed close to him, almost shielding him with its body, as if Evan was not an intruder, not an outsider, but something the beast had been waiting for. The wind shifted across the clearing, carrying distant echoes from the forest, warnings of movements too silent to be human. Sarai's eyes scanned the tree line, sensing a disturbance, something watching them, something wrong. Evan noticed it too, a faint shadow flickering behind the shimmering leaves. For one moment, human instinct and alien instinct aligned, pulling both of them into the same unspoken awareness. Rune growled softly, but not at Evan, not even at Sarai. It growled at whatever waited in the dark. Something dangerous, something ancient, something hungry. And in that moment, under the alien sky glowing with twin moons, Evan understood one thing with absolute clarity. He was not standing between danger and the creature. He was standing beside it, chosen by it, connected to it. And something out there had just realized that the human boy was no longer alone. The story of their destiny began with a meeting, a silent bond, and a nightmare beast lowering its head to a human who refused to run. The alien girl who hid her heart. The quiet after Rune bowed felt heavier than the roar of any storm, settling over the training field like a blanket of disbelief. Evan remained still, his hand resting gently on the creature's scaled head, feeling the slow, powerful breath that rose and fell beneath his palm. A part of him wondered if he was dreaming, because nothing in the human manuals or briefing simulations ever mentioned a deadly alien beast showing affection like a loyal companion. Sarai watched with eyes sharp as crystal blades, her heartbeat uneven beneath her armor, trying to understand why her creation, her loyal shadow, had lowered itself to a human boy who barely understood this world. She took a slow step forward and Rune lifted its head, not to attack but to acknowledge her presence. Sarai's voice floated through the air with a soft, practiced calm, yet Evan sensed a tremor hiding beneath it. She asked him how he managed to stand still when the creature charged, and Evan answered with honesty, saying he simply felt that running would make everything worse. It wasn't bravery, he said quietly. It was more like instinct, something deeper guiding him toward calm when his body screamed for fear. Sarai studied him for a long moment, her eyes cold and unreadable, yet something flickered behind them. A tiny spark of curiosity, perhaps even admiration, hidden so well that only someone looking closely would notice. Around them, alien soldiers whispered nervously, questioning what they had just witnessed, murmuring that the human must have some strange power, or that Rune might have malfunctioned or become unstable. The air thickened with suspicion as eyes followed Evan, judging him, measuring him, fearing him. Evan felt those stares sharp enough to pierce armor, but he refused to shrink under them because Rune stayed close. Standing like a silent guardian by his side, Sarai dismissed the soldiers with a single raised hand, her authority unquestioned, and slowly the group scattered, though their whispers lingered like cold wind on a winter night. When the field emptied, only Sarai, Rune, and Evan remained, framed by the golden glow of Lethera's twin suns sinking behind the crystalline hills. For a moment, silence stretched between them, a silence filled with questions neither dared to ask. Sarai broke it first, her voice softer than before, asking Evan to walk with her toward the edge of the training grounds. Rune moved behind him, close enough for Evan to feel the warmth of its breath touching his back like a protective warning. As they walked, Sarai glanced at him from the corner of her eye, studying the way he observed the alien world with awe rather than fear. She asked him why he had come to Lethera, a world so far from Earth that humans only visited for diplomacy and dangerous assignments. Evan explained that he had volunteered not for glory, not for medals, but because he wanted to see something beyond the familiar skies he grew up under. He wanted to understand other worlds, other lives, other hearts that beat differently yet maybe felt the same. Sarai listened quietly, her expression unreadable, but his answer seemed to reach something inside her, something she normally kept locked away behind pride and duty. They stopped near the forest line, where shimmering leaves glowed with faint bioluminescent light, casting soft blue reflections across their armor. Rune sniffed the air, alert but calm, as if determining whether the shadows around them were safe. Sarai turned to Evan and said that Rune bonding to a stranger was impossible, scientifically and genetically impossible. She told him how she engineered the creature from her family's ancient DNA, creating a protector that recognized only her and her bloodline. Rune was born to trust no one, obey no one, bow to no one but its creator. Yet now here it was, lowering its head to a human who carried none of her DNA, none of her heritage, none of her world. Evan felt a strange weight settle on his chest, not fear but responsibility, as if something had chosen him before he even understood what was at stake. He looked at Sarai and whispered that he didn't know why it happened, but he promised he meant no harm to her or her world. For the first time since she met him, Sarai saw something in his eyes that made her chest tighten, a kind of honest warmth she had never seen in the cold, calculated world of Litheran politics. She realized he was different, this human with quiet courage and steady eyes, someone who stood firm not out of pride but because his heart refused to bend. Before she could speak, a sharp crack echoed from the forest, making Rune tense instantly, its muscles coiling like drawn wires. Evan turned quickly, scanning the trees, sensing danger even before Sarai raised her hand in warning. The shadows trembled for a moment, then stilled, leaving behind a whisper of movement too silent for ordinary creatures. Sarai's voice dropped to a whisper, telling him that the forest belonged to tribes who disliked humans. Tribes who did not follow laws or peace treaties. They would see Evan as a threat, she warned softly. And they would not hesitate to strike in the dark. Rune growled low, stepping closer to Evan, gently nudging him away from the tree line as if urging him to stay behind its shield. Sarai watched the creature's protective stance with a mixture of awe and fear, realizing that whatever bond had formed between Rune and Evan was growing stronger with every passing breath. She turned toward him again, her voice low but sincere as she told him that this bond could change everything. Her people, her family, the council, even the tribes in the forest would react in ways neither of them could predict. And as she spoke, the twin moons rose behind her, casting silver light across her face, making her eyes glow like distant stars filled with secrets she had never dared to share. Evan felt the weight of a new destiny settling over him, a destiny he hadn't asked for but could not walk away from. Because Sarai, the girl feared by many yet lonely in ways no one saw, was looking at him not with suspicion anymore, but with something softer, something fragile, something almost like trust. And Rune, the nightmare beast of legend, stood beside him as if daring the whole world to challenge that trust. The night deepened around them. The forest whispered, and fate quietly tightened its grip on all three of them. This was no longer just a strange meeting. It was the beginning of a connection that would shake two worlds, expose buried powers, and test the limits of loyalty, love, and war. The first attack. The night on Lethera always arrived like a living creature, slow and watchful, crawling across the sky with shadows that breathed and whispered through the forest. Evan felt those whispers now, brushing against his skin like cold fingers, carrying warnings he didn't understand but instinctively felt. Sarai stood beside him, her posture strong but her eyes scanning the dark with a tension she rarely showed, a tension that made Evan realize the danger here was not imaginary. Rune shifted its massive body, muscles tightening beneath its scaled skin, every sense sharpened as if the beast was preparing for something coming closer. With every passing second, Evan swallowed hard, trying to ignore the tremor moving through the trees, a sound too soft to be wind yet too purposeful to be harmless. Sarai lifted a hand silently, her fingers glowing faintly with the runes embedded in her armor, signaling him to stay behind her. But Evan stepped forward instead, his voice barely above a whisper as he said he wouldn't hide while she faced danger alone. For a moment something warm flickered in Sarai's chest, something that made her breath catch, but there was no time to hold on to that feeling. The forest suddenly cracked open with a sharp snap, like bones breaking under pressure, and from the thick shadows, spears lined with electric threads flew toward them, slicing the air with deadly precision. Rune leaped forward with terrifying speed, its tail whipping the ground and its body crashing into the spears mid-air, shattering them before they could touch Sarai or Evan. A haunting war cry echoed through the night, a sound so raw and violent that it made Evan's blood turn cold. Figures emerged from the trees, tall, masked, dressed in tribal armor woven from dark crystals and living vines, their eyes burning with hatred as they charged. Sarai cursed under her breath, recognizing the symbols on their armor, realizing this was the rogue tribe she warned Evan about, the ones who believed humans brought unbalance to their world. She drew her blade in one swift motion, the runes on its surface lighting up with a pale blue glow that cut through the darkness like a streak of lightning. She fought with a grace that seemed almost unreal, her movements blending speed and elegance as she blocked, dodged, and countered each attack with fluid precision. But the tribe had planned this ambush, and their numbers grew with every breath, their silhouettes shifting between the trees like predators who knew the forest better than any map could describe. Evan grabbed a fallen spear, gripping it tightly, though he knew it was nothing compared to their weapons. Still, he rushed forward, pushing aside his fear, moving towards Sarai with the same stubborn courage he had shown the first day he faced Rune. He blocked a strike aimed at her back, the force sending shockwaves through his arms. But he held firm, teeth clenched, refusing to fall. Sarai turned just in time to see him protecting her, and for a moment her heart stumbled in her chest. Stunned by the human's reckless loyalty, Rune roared, a sound that made the ground vibrate and the trees tremble, then launched itself into the attackers with fury that burned brighter than fire. The beast moved like a storm, claws ripping through traps, fangs snapping through ropes, its powerful tail smashing warriors off their feet. But even with Rune's strength and Sarai's skill, the tribe kept closing in, trapping them in a ring of shadows and blades. One warrior managed to hurl a glowing net towards Sarai, its edges crackling with energy meant to paralyze whatever it touched. Evan saw it first, and without thinking he pushed Sarai aside and took the hit himself. The net wrapping around his body like burning ice. He crashed to the ground, pain exploding through him like fire. His muscles locking, breath caught in his throat. Sarai's scream tore through the night, raw and furious, a sound that surprised even her as she lunged toward him, cutting the net with a sweep of her blade. But the tribe had seen what they came for, and their leader stepped forward, raising a spear coated in a poison so dark it seemed to absorb the moonlight. Sarai recognized that poison, the venom extracted from ancient beasts, a single drop enough to stop a heart in seconds, and she froze, realizing they were not here for training grounds or territory. They were here to take her, to force her family into surrender. And Evan had just stepped into the middle of a war he didn't even know existed. The leader lunged, but Rune intercepted, slamming the warrior to the ground, its jaws snapping inches from the man's throat. The tribe hesitated, startled by the beast's ferocity, and for one brief second doubt flickered in their eyes. Sarai took that moment to grab Evan, pulling him close, whispering his name in a voice filled with fear she could no longer hide. Evan's breathing was unsteady, his eyes clouded with pain, but he managed a weak smile, telling her he couldn't let her get hurt, not when he had a chance to stop it. Her chest tightened painfully at his words, her throat tightening as she realized how close she had come to losing him. Rune growled again, louder this time, and the tribe stepped back, fear creeping into their faces as the beast's eyes flared with a blue fire they had never seen before. The rogue warriors retreated into the forest, fading like ghosts swallowed by the night, leaving behind only broken spears, crushed leaves, and the echo of their threat. Sarai held Evan in her arms, her hands trembling, her voice whispering questions he was too weak to answer. She pressed her forehead against his for a moment, letting her fear bleed away in a silent promise she had never made to anyone before. Rune moved closer, curling its massive body around them protectively, as if shielding them from the world itself. And under the moonlight, in the quiet after the battle, Sarai realized that something had changed forever. She had saved him, he had saved her, and the bond between them had grown too deep for either world to ignore anymore. Of hidden in shadows, the night after the attack felt different, heavier somehow, as if the forest itself remembered the violence and kept its breath held in fear. Sarai walked slowly through the quiet path leading to her private shelter, her arms wrapped tightly around Evan's trembling body, carrying him with a desperation she couldn't hide anymore. Every step she took left a trail of glowing dust rising from the ground, answering to the energy inside her armor, as if even the planet sensed her fear for the wounded human in her arms. Rune followed beside them, its massive head lowered, its eyes burning with worry and fury that had not faded since the fight ended. Evan's breathing was uneven, his skin pale under the alien moonlight, yet he still tried to speak, whispering that she didn't need to carry him this far. Sarai hushed him softly, her voice shaking despite her attempt to sound calm, telling him to save his strength, telling him she would not let him fall again tonight. For someone known across her world as cold, distant, and untouchable, she looked nothing like the warrior they feared. She looked like someone terrified of losing something she did not fully understand yet. Inside her shelter, soft lights warmed the walls, and the scent of healing herbs drifted through the air. Sarai laid Evan gently on a low bed and immediately placed her palms over his wound, letting the glowing blue runes along her fingers activate. Her healing energy flowed into him like warm water weaving through shattered stone, repairing what it could, stabilizing what it couldn't fix yet. Evan winced at the pressure, but his eyes softened when he saw the fear. On her face, a fear she did not try to hide anymore. She told him he was foolish, charging into a battle meant for warriors trained since childhood. He smiled weakly and whispered that he had seen her in danger and could not walk away. Sarai's heart stumbled again, her breath catching as she looked at him, realizing he meant every word. No political gain, no military pride, no hidden motive, just a human choosing her over his own safety. Her fingers brushed his cheek lightly, almost trembling, and for a moment she allowed herself to feel something she had buried for years, the loneliness of being feared, the emptiness of being admired from a distance but never approached, the constant weight of expectations she had carried since childhood. Evan saw all of it in her eyes, and his hand rose slowly to touch her wrist, giving her silent comfort. The simple gesture made her chest ache in a way she had never known, a soft ache that felt fragile and dangerous and beautiful at the same time. Rune settled beside the bed, its massive form curling protectively around them, letting out a deep rumble that vibrated through the floor. The beast's presence was steady and calming, like a guardian spirit watching over its chosen family. Sarai reached out and touched Rune's head gently, whispering a grateful command for it to rest. Even though she knew the creature wouldn't fully sleep tonight, time passed slowly, measured only by the soft rise and fall of Evan's chest. At some point he opened his eyes again, finding Sarai sitting beside him, her back straight but her expression soft and unguarded. He told her she should rest too, because she had fought harder than anyone he had ever seen. She shook her head quietly, saying she wasn't leaving him alone, saying the thought of something happening to him while she slept was unbearable. Evan reached out with a trembling hand and touched her fingers, his voice low as he told her she didn't have to pretend anymore. She frowned, asking him what she was pretending, but her voice already carried the truth he saw so clearly. He told her she didn't have to act like she felt nothing, like she wasn't afraid, like she wasn't hurt by what had happened tonight. Sarai looked away, her eyes glistening with emotions she had hidden for years, emotions she never let her people see, but Evan was different, and somehow she felt safe letting him see the cracks beneath her armor. She whispered that she had spent her entire life being the strong one, the feared one, the perfect daughter of a powerful house, that showing weakness was forbidden, and caring too deeply was considered a flaw that could destroy a warrior. Evan listened quietly, his gaze steady and warm, giving her space to speak what she had buried deep in her heart. And when she finished, he squeezed her hand gently and told her she didn't have to be alone anymore. Those words hit her harder than any blow she had taken in battle. She blinked slowly, trying to steady her breath, because for the first time in her life, someone offered her understanding instead of fear. Rune lifted its head and watched them with 6 glowing eyes, sensing the deepening bond between them, its body relaxing as if it approved. Outside, the forest whispered again, but this time the sound felt distant, unable to reach the fragile peace inside the shelter. Sarai leaned closer without realizing it, her forehead brushing Evan's gently, the warmth between them soft and natural. Evan's breath touched her lips, and for one fragile moment the world outside stopped existing. The warrior girl feared by many and the human boy who refused to run stayed frozen in that delicate closeness, bound by something neither of them had planned but both of them felt with every heartbeat. Yet beneath the warmth a shadow remained. Because Sarai knew her people would not accept this bond easily, she knew the council watched her every move, that the tribes in the forest would not forget tonight's attack, and Rune, as loyal and powerful as it was, could not shield them from the rising storm forever. But for one night in the dim glow of the shelter, Sarai allowed herself to stay close to the human who saw her not as a weapon or a legend, but as a person, and Evan, even through the pain, felt something in his heart settle into place, something that made him certain he didn't want to leave her world. Not now, not ever. The night grew deeper. The bond between them grew stronger, and destiny tightened its threads around them once more, because love had begun to bloom in the shadows, and nothing on Lethera would remain the same after this night. The betrayal, the morning after the attack, rose with a muted, uneasy light, as if the twin suns were hesitant to brighten a world still trembling from last night's shadows. Evan woke slowly, his body heavy but healing, the memory of Sarai's trembling hands and Rune's protective growl lingering in his mind, like fragments of a half-remembered dream. He sat up carefully, finding Sarai standing near the entrance of the shelter, her back to him, her shoulders tense, her hands clasped behind her in a way that betrayed the storm building inside her. Rune lay beside her, but the beast's 6 glowing eyes were fixed on the horizon, as if sensing danger far beyond what the human senses could reach. Evan called her name softly and she turned, but her expression was not the gentle one she had shown him in the quiet hours of the night. Her face was colder, her posture stiff, her voice tightly controlled as she asked how he felt. Evan nodded, saying he was better, but he could see something was wrong. Something she wasn't saying yet. He asked her what happened and her eyes shifted away, as if she was searching for words she didn't want to speak out loud. Before she could answer, the shelter door slid open with a sharp sound. One of Sarai's closest friends, a young alien warrior named Kalor, stepped inside, his expression tight with something between worry and jealousy. He looked at Evan with a sharp, accusing gaze, then turned to Sarai and demanded she follow him immediately. Sarai's eyes darkened, sensing urgency, and she asked him what happened. Kalor hesitated, then whispered words that made her blood freeze. Sarai, the council knows. Evan felt his heartbeat stumble as he looked between them, unsure what that meant but knowing it was nothing good. Sarai stiffened, her voice barely a breath as she asked how they found out. Kalor hesitated again, his eyes flickering with guilt. And in that hesitation, the truth slipped through the cracks. Someone had told them. Someone close. Someone she trusted. Sarai's fingers clenched, her knuckles pale as she took a step forward, her voice sharp with betrayal as she asked him directly. Kaelor didn't speak, but he didn't need to. The silence between them broke the truth open in a way no confession could. Sarai stepped back as if struck, her breath trembling. Her eyes wide with hurt she could not hide even behind her warrior's mask. Evan's chest tightened painfully as he watched her heart fracture right in front of him. Kaelor tried to justify himself, saying he did it for her own good, that the council would be furious if they discovered her secret bond with the human later, that it was better to reveal it now than be accused of treason. But Sarai's voice cut through his excuses like a blade. Cold and trembling with fury she rarely showed. "You betrayed me," she whispered, and those 3 words were heavier than any weapon she had ever carried. Kaelor's jaw tightened, jealousy flashing in his eyes as he looked at Evan once more. He muttered that the human was changing her, corrupting her judgment, weakening her strength. Rune growled low, a warning that vibrated the floor, but Kaelor ignored it, shouting that she was risking everything, her family, her legacy, her position, for a human who didn't belong here. Sarai stepped forward, her voice ice-cold as she said Evan belonged wherever she chose him to be. But the argument stopped abruptly when alarms echoed through the compound. Sharp metallic sounds that sent a surge of panic through the air. Kaelor paled and told them the council had already sent soldiers to capture Rune and detain Evan. Sarai inhaled sharply, her body trembling with rage and fear, understanding that this betrayal had cost them everything. Evan tried to stand, insisting he could handle himself. But pain shot through him and he stumbled. Sarai caught him instantly, whispering fiercely that he would not face this alone, not while she still had breath in her body outside. Footsteps thundered through the corridors, armor clashing, weapons buzzing with electrical charge. Rune leapt to the door, its body tensing, its scales glowing faintly with the ancient runes awakening beneath its skin. Sarai grabbed her weapon, her heart pounding as she told Evan they had to escape through the forest. But soldiers stormed the compound before they could move, forming a circle around them with blasters aimed directly at Rune and Evan. Sarai stepped in front of Evan instinctively, her blade drawn, her voice cold as she warned them to back away. The soldiers ignored her, their orders clear, their fear hidden beneath rigid discipline. They shouted commands to restrain the human, to isolate the beast, to escort Sarai to the council chambers. Evan's heart pounded as he tried to push himself in front of her, refusing to let her be taken alone. But Sarai pressed a trembling hand against his chest, telling him to stay behind her, her voice cracking with emotion she could barely contain. Kaelor stood to the side, his face pale as he watched what he had triggered. Realization settling over him like ice. Sarai glared at him with a look so cold it silenced him completely. "You said revealing the truth would protect me," she whispered. "But all you've done is destroy everything," Rune roared suddenly, a deafening sound that shook the walls, its eyes blazing with a fire that terrified even the trained soldiers. The beast lunged forward, smashing through weapons and shields, scattering armored bodies like leaves in a storm. Chaos erupted instantly, blaster shots flashing through the air, shouts echoing through the compound, the floor trembling under the force of Rune's fury. Evan grabbed Sarai's arm, pulling her back, shouting her name as smoke filled the room and walls cracked under the beast's strength. She turned toward him, eyes filled with fear, love, and a desperate need to keep him safe. But before they could escape, more soldiers flooded the hall, forming an impenetrable wall of armor and light. Rune stood in front of them, snarling, ready to fight the entire world if it meant protecting the 2 beings it cared for most. And Sarai, trembling yet unbroken, stood between the human she loved and the army that wanted to tear them apart, knowing that the next few moments would shape the fate of her heart, her people, and the beast she created from her own blood. The betrayal had begun, a chain reaction none of them could stop, and the storm that followed would tear open the truth, reveal ancient powers, and force Sarai and Evan to face a choice that could unite their worlds or destroy them forever. Rise of the Human Guardian. The compound shook with every roar that erupted from Rune's throat, the walls trembling as if the building itself feared the unleashed fury of the ancient beast. Evan felt the vibrations through the floor, through his chest, through his very bones, each shockwave reminding him that this creature was no ordinary protector, but something far older and far more powerful than he had ever imagined. Sarai grabbed his hand tightly, her fingers cold despite the fire burning in her eyes, her breath sharp as she pulled him behind a collapsing pillar, trying to shield him from the exploding shards of metal and crystal raining from above. Smoke filled the air, thick and electric, glowing faintly with the energy of shattered Lithuran tech, creating a fog that turned every figure into a shifting silhouette, moving through chaos. Rune lunged again, its body moving like a force of nature, smashing through a row of soldiers as if they were nothing more than drifting leaves caught in a hurricane. Blaster shots cracked like thunder, ricocheting off its scales, but the creature didn't slow, its 6 glowing eyes burning with a light that seemed to grow brighter with every second. Sarai stared at the beast with a mixture of awe and fear, whispering that something was awakening inside it, something ancient hidden in the bloodline she had used to create it. Evan felt it too, not with his eyes but through a strange pull deep in his chest, as if Rune's energy was echoing inside him, calling to something he didn't understand. A soldier aimed a high-energy cannon at Rune, and Sarai pushed Evan aside just as the weapon discharged, the blast tearing through the pillar they had been hiding behind seconds earlier. Evan rolled across the floor, gasping as heat brushed his skin, the aftershock rattling his teeth. He struggled to stand, vision spinning, but when he did, he saw something that stopped his breath completely. Rune was standing between him and the cannon, its body arched defensively, scales glowing with bright blue light that pulsed like a heartbeat. It wasn't just shielding him, it was reacting to him, bonding to him in a way no creature should have been able to bond to anyone but Sarai. The beast roared again, but this time the sound shifted, deepening, vibrating through the air like a living command that made every soldier freeze for one impossible moment. The blue glow on its body spread outward, forming a faint shimmering field around both Evan and Sarai. Evan blinked, confused, lifting his hand slowly, and the glow followed the movement. Rippling like liquid light, Sarai's eyes widened, her voice barely a whisper as she told him that Rune's energy was syncing with his heartbeat, something only possible if the creature had chosen him as its anchor, its chosen guardian. The soldiers, realizing the threat, regrouped quickly, shouting orders to fire again, but Rune's shield expanded, catching the blasts and dissolving them into harmless sparks before they could reach Evan or Sarai. Evan felt the power move through him like a warm tide, not painful, not overwhelming, but steady and alive. His senses sharpened, colors deepening, sounds becoming clearer, his reflexes faster than they had ever been. Sarai turned to him, her expression a mix of shock and emotion she couldn't put into words as she whispered that he was changing, that Rune was giving him access to abilities no human had ever touched before, abilities once reserved for ancient guardians of her world's oldest bloodlines. A sudden explosion tore through the northern wall as another wave of soldiers entered, weapons glowing, shields raised, their voices shaking as they shouted for Rune to stand down or be terminated. Sarai stepped in front of Evan, blade raised, her anger rising like a storm as she declared she would not let them harm him. But Evan moved before she could finish, stepping forward instinctively as a soldier fired a charged spear directly at her chest. The world slowed around him, every detail sharpening in perfect clarity. He reached out with a speed he didn't know he possessed, catching the spear mid-flight, the electricity coursing through his arm, but unable to break the strange shield surrounding him. The soldiers stared at him in disbelief as he snapped the weapon in half, the pieces falling to the ground with a faint crack. Sarai gasped softly, her eyes wide with awe as she saw the impossible unfold right before her. Rune growled behind him, the glow of its runes pulsing in rhythm with Evan's breath. As if their energies were becoming one, Evan turned to Sarai, his voice steady, his heart steady even though fear should have overwhelmed him. He told her he wouldn't run anymore, that he wouldn't hide, that if her world wanted to treat him like a threat, then he would protect her and Rune with everything he had. Sarai's throat tightened, emotion burning behind her eyes, because she had never heard such unwavering loyalty from anyone, not even from warriors trained since birth to follow her. She reached for his hand, but before their fingers touched, alarms blared across the compound, signaling an incoming fleet approaching from the upper atmosphere. The color drained from her face as she whispered that those were human ships. Earth Command had detected the battle. Earth thought she was hurting Evan. And now both worlds were preparing for war. The soldiers froze, staring at the sky through the shattered ceiling as streaks of light descended from orbit. Sarai looked at Evan, fear gripping her chest, because she knew exactly what would happen next. Her people would attack the humans for trespassing. The humans would fire back thinking she was a threat, and before either side realized the truth, the war she always feared would ignite, a war born from misunderstanding, fear, and a bond no one on either world was ready to accept. Rune moved between them, growling softly, its body glowing brighter as if preparing for the chaos to come. Evan placed his hand on the beast's head, and the glow intensified, spreading across the floor like ripples of light. Sarai watched them, her heart racing, understanding now that their bond was far more powerful and far more dangerous than she had ever imagined. But she also understood something else, something that made her voice tremble as she whispered his name. Evan might be the only one who could stop this war because Rune had chosen him, and destiny had placed him between two worlds at the exact moment they were about to collide. The fleet drew closer, the ground trembled, and the air filled with rising tension. Evan stepped forward, the glow surrounding him like a living promise, ready to face whatever came next, ready to protect Sarai, Rune, and the fragile connection that had changed all their lives forever. The final choice, the sky above Lithera, burned with streaks of fire and light, the incoming human fleet casting shadows across the crystalline mountains like falling stars ready to strike. Evan stood at the edge of the shattered compound, his chest rising and falling as he felt the pulse of Rune's glowing energy beneath his hands. The beast's body stretched like a living storm around him, muscles coiling, runes blazing, eyes six flames that reflected both fury and an ancient, unspoken wisdom. Sarai stood beside him, blade in hand, her silver blue hair whipped by the wind carrying the scent of ozone and electricity, her eyes wide, filled with fear, love, and unyielding determination. The ground trembled as the first wave of alien soldiers advanced, and the humans hovered above in ships, their weapons primed, scanning for threats. The air crackled with energy so thick it made Evan's skin tingle, every sense heightened, every heartbeat synchronized with Rune's glowing pulse. Sarai whispered that they had seconds to act before the world collapsed into chaos. Evan nodded, feeling something awaken deep inside him, a connection not only with Rune but with the energy of the planet itself, a bond that gave him reflexes, strength, and clarity beyond human limits. The first missile streaked toward the compound, leaving a blazing trail, and Evan didn't hesitate. He sprinted forward, Rune leaping beside him, moving with a speed and grace that made the wind scream past their ears. Sarai shouted, trying to warn him to stop, but he couldn't, because he knew this was the moment that would define everything. He reached the missile just as it struck the ground, Rune's roar blending with the explosion, a wave of energy erupting that pushed both him and the beast into the air. The glow around them expanded rapidly, forming a dome of pulsating blue light that deflected debris, fire. The first attacks from both sides, Evan felt it ripple through him like liquid power, every nerve alive, every thought crystal clear. He realized then that Rune's energy had fused with his own, granting him control of the protective shield. And he understood the cost before he fully accepted it, that the bond required a sacrifice, a release of life energy that only Rune could give fully to maintain. Sarai reached out, her hand trembling as she gripped his arm, whispering that he could not let the beast die. Evan shook his head, telling her it wasn't just the beast. It was the only way to save both worlds. He could feel Rune's awareness within him, calm, strong, and willing, ready to give everything to protect him, her, and the fragile peace. The soldiers stopped, the humans froze, and the alien army hesitated, sensing the surge of power that no one could understand. The first missiles exploded harmlessly against the shimmering dome, the blast illuminating Evan's determined face. Sarai's tears fell as she shouted his name. Her voice lost in the roar of energy. Evan held her gaze, whispering that they would survive, that they had to, and Rune's rumbling echoed agreement beneath his hands. The dome expanded, a living shield of blue fire, radiating outward, touching every corner of the battlefield. Alien weapons short-circuited under the energy. Human ships rocked from the sudden force, and for one impossible moment, silence fell across the chaos. Rune lifted its head toward Evan, glowing brighter than ever, and Evan understood the final choice. The creature could not survive the fusion, but it could release its energy entirely, protecting everyone while giving him the strength to endure. He whispered softly to Rune, promising he would honor it, promising he would not let the sacrifice be in vain. Rune leaned into him, its eyes locking onto his, communicating loyalty, trust, and love without words. And then with one final roar it released everything, a wave of pure light that enveloped the battlefield. The blast washed over the compound, the forest, the ships above, and even the distant mountains, turning everything it touched into a glowing shimmer of peace. Evan felt the energy flow through him, stronger than he had imagined, then fade, leaving him gasping, his body shaking but alive. He opened his eyes to see the battlefield cleared, both human and alien soldiers standing frozen, awe and fear written across their faces. And then he saw Sarai running to him, tears streaming, her hands clasping his face as she whispered that Rune was gone, that it had given everything for them. Evan held her, feeling the warmth of her body, the rhythm of her breath, and he whispered back that Rune had not disappeared, that its energy lived within him now, a bond eternal, a guardian spirit that would guide them forever. They stood together under the twin moons, the light of the shattered battlefield reflecting in their eyes. The humans slowly lowered their weapons, the aliens retreated, and both sides realized the impossible had happened. The world had been spared by the courage of one human and the sacrifice of a beast born of legend. Sarai wrapped her arms around him tightly, her voice breaking as she admitted the truth she had hidden all along, that she had fallen in love with him, that she feared losing him, that he had changed her in ways she had never imagined possible. Evan smiled, holding her close, whispering that he loved her too, that together they could face anything. The wind swept across the forest, carrying the distant hum of ships returning home, and for the first time the world felt quiet, peaceful, fragile, and alive, and in the distance, a soft glow shimmered where Rune had vanished, a promise written in light that the guardian spirit would never truly leave them. Evan and Sarai looked at each other, knowing that their bond, forged through fire, danger, and impossible trust, would define the fate of two worlds. They had survived not by power alone, not by strength alone, but by courage, love, and the choice to face the impossible together. And under the alien sky, amidst the ruins and quiet, they took their first steps into a future that had been born from sacrifice, a future where humans and aliens might finally understand that love, loyalty, and trust could rise even from the most terrifying of nightmares. And though Rune's body was gone, its heart beat in every step they took, in every pulse of energy that connected them, in every silent promise that nothing would ever separate them again. The war had ended, the sacrifice had been made, and the human and the alien girl, bound by fate, stood together at the dawn of a new era,